right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the Sherdog Radio Network. The dynamic duo is finally back. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. I am a writer for Sherdog.com and also the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. Before I introduce my co-host, I want to say thank you to Davison Baker, who filled in for me, did a wonderful job last week as I was on vacation in Ocean City, Maryland, hanging out with my family, doing all the touristy stuff, hanging out at the beach and all that stuff. I did watch the fights, but I didn't think it would be right to do a podcast, though I did do the Dana White Contender Series preview. Of course, I have to get to the co-host of this show. He is the senior editor of Sherdog.com, but better known as the official Sherdog Predictions cheater. He, of course, is Mr. Benjamin Duffy. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and now I'm just stuck in a time machine because I actually grew up in Maryland, and so Ocean City was our kind of spring break destination spot, weekends during the summer, all through, junior high school.
Oh, cool.
My first few years of college when I'd still come back home to see my parents over the summer. So good memories of Ocean City, the boardwalk, tacky airbrush T-shirts, and French fries with vinegar on them.
Yeah, we did all those things. We didn't do the T-shirts, but every single thing. Every year we go on one family vacation and we try to go to a different place. Last year we went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. This year is Ocean City, Maryland. We'll try somewhere else next year. So, are we going to get to the big beef that we have? The biggest fight this weekend was not Smith versus Rakic. It was Shillan versus Duffy. Let me give some backstory. If people don't remember, I am the reigning Sherdog I never got the belt, by the way. Reigning Sherdog prediction champion.
Yes.
I was making my surge to repeat. There is thousands, if not millions, of Sherdog.com viewers, listeners who are rooting for me to do this. But suddenly, my picks do not get counted based on a technicality. So how you are the one in charge of this. How does it feel to be the USADA of the Sherdog predictions? How does it feel to be counting picograms against me?
Oh, I mean, this is even beyond like USADA or picograms. This is more like a professional wrestling angle. I'm like Vince McMahon, and I'm like just totally screwing over my biggest star and my biggest babyface just to draw some heat to myself. That's what this is all about.
So does that make me Stone Cold? Am I Stone Cold? Is that what it is?
I think so, yes.
All right. What? So just for you guys know, I sent my prediction in late and did not get counted. Of course, during that time, I made a joke and said, of course, I'm going to go 5 for 5. And of course, I went 5 for 5. Actually, for you guys who follow me on Twitter, and it's been an extremely long time since I've done that, I went 10 for 10. I picked every single fight correct tonight and did not get any credit for it at all. And I fall further behind in the Sherdog standings because of it. Yeah, I didn't reach the deadline. I still say shenanigans. I think it's a conspiracy against me, but I regress. Let's get into the big fight. We had Anthony Smith, former UFC light heavyweight title challenger, taking on Alexander Rakic. Rakic won by unanimous decision in a pretty one-sided affair. Ben, this fight, was only a 3-round main event due to the original main event, which was this Zabit and Yair, right? But why was this only a 3-rounder? What, I can't remember. Why is
it's because it was a last minute thing.
Okay.
This was this was the Zabit and Yair one where Yair hurt his ankle during training.
They wanted to be that one. Then they kind of had to put this together. Both guys decided on 3 rounds. I don't think 2 rounds were necessary. 2 more rounds, like it would have been a lot more of the same. The only thing that might have happened, Rakic might have got a stoppage. But based on it being only a 3-round main event, this seemed like to me either like a Bellator main event in like Thackerville, Oklahoma. You know, like that one that like they have to throw one on this month, but no one gets. It's like when Ed Ruth takes on John Salter or something, you know, whatever. Like that's what this felt like to me. Or it felt like when there's a stacked UFC pay-per-view and then they have like ranked fighters facing each other in meaningful fights on like the ESPN prelims. Like that's what this felt like to me. How did it feel? Like, did this feel like a true main event to you?
No, it felt like what it was, a kind of thrown together at the last minute thing. It was an interesting matchup. I thought it was a very appropriate matchup when it was announced, but it did not feel like main event material, even for a fight night card.
Yeah. It's been a couple times now. I was thinking about the Zabit Magomed Sharipov Calvin Kattar fight that was only a 3-round main event. We've had other ones like that. Bellator still they make it Bellator. The guys at Bellator actually make jokes because for about 3 or 4 events in a row, I was the one who always asked Scott Coker, like, "Hey, when are you going to get 5-round pay-per-views?" Like Ed from our staff, he still makes jokes about like, "All right, when are you going to ask him?" I was thinking about this, and this is what I've come up with a solution why I think obviously title fights should be 5 rounds, but to say like I've heard some people say, well, the main event automatically should be, which the UFC has for the most part made it that way. Now it's the exception if you're not a 5-round. And I've heard a lot of people say the co-main event should automatically be. The issue with the co-main event is suddenly a co-main event falls out and the third one from the bottom becomes a co-main. So what I think should happen is if 2 fighters are ranked in the top 15, that should automatically be a 5-round fight. Yay or nay?
I like the idea on principle. The only problem I have is that it presumably would hinge on the UFC's rankings that are just garbage. So, you know, if there were some sort of independent rankings, then I would say, yeah, just it should be automatic.
You mean
because I like the idea. I like the idea in principle because it means that by the time somebody gets to a title shot, they have, you know, a certain amount of experience fighting 5-round fights. I think that can only be good for the quality of the product. Yeah, the only problem I have with it is the rankings on which it would be based, which would presumably be the UFC's own rankings.
So are you telling me that the UFC rankings aren't independent? I mean, I thought we had writers from all these different websites who get to pick from the fighters that the UFC nominate and say, these are the fighters you have to pick from, and that's their top 50.
And I'm not even mad at the panel, you know, like that's up to them. And there are some good people on the panel. But now that we've seen the guide sheets that they send out where they're like, you know, you must rank this person between number 4 and number 8. It's like,
yeah,
what's independent about that? That's
and credit. I think I don't know if other people, but I know Eric Cowell of Miami News. He's been like the whistleblower. He's on the panel, and he was putting that out there in the public. I don't know if any other members did, but you know, credit to him to do that. You know, he was one of the guys who wasn't scared to get in a fight with the UFC. He's still on the panel. Is anybody from Sherdog on the panel?
Nope, definitely not.
So, like one of the longest websites been around, one of the most credible websites. The actually technically by traffic volume, the number 1 trafficked website doesn't get a panelist.
Nope.
Another conspiracy against me. But I mean, so if I'm with you. If we actually had some kind of rankings, but that goes with like we should have an actual MMA Hall of Fame and not UFC Hall of Fame. But we get way down track. That's what happens when we tape it right after the event, and it's like 1:45 in the morning here. Let's talk about the actual fight. Kind of a coming out party for Alexander Rakic. Picks up the biggest win of his career over a former title challenger. This was not competitive. Rakic dominated this fight. Let's talk about the kicks. The leg kicks.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're going there.
The leg kicks were just so on point. But let's take away the calf kicks for a second. We'll get to the calf kicks in a second. But like he was in the second round, he started changing when Smith was worried about the calf kicks. He started coming on with the left side, it's like switch kicks to the body. It was just brutal. But he was brutalizing Anthony Smith. But the calf kicks, do you think the calf kicks? Now, of course, like a uppercut to the jaw or a Francis Ngannou punch. But when we talk about techniques, you know, you hear about people who have a good chin. You know, like, for example, they kept talking on the broadcast today about Zach Cummings, how great his chin was. You don't hear anybody having good calves. Like, it seems like it's like the, Achilles heel, like, you know, of everybody. Like, everybody who gets kicked in the calves, eventually your leg is going to give out. I mean, we see, you know, either you're going to fall down in pain, you're going to get the dead leg that we saw Henry Cejudo get, we see Michael Chandler get. Some people think Sean O'Malley got it, you know. Has it got to the point where it has gone from being so devastating to kind of almost not that fun that you can just – and you can't really block them, you can't really check them. Like, there's nothing you can do other than punch a guy in the face in response to the leg kicks.
I agree that they've certainly become weaponized to a point we've never seen before this year, because theoretically they've always been available. You could have done one of these at UFC 1 if you wanted to. You could have done one at UFC 100 or 200. They really just kind of became a hot talking point again within, I would say, the last 2 years, 2 to 3. But it's really just this year that all of a sudden they're starting to make a big difference in a lot of fights. But this is an arms race. Mm-hmm. You know, we'll start to see something be done about it going forward. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of interested to see what some of the more forward-thinking camps with some of the better fighters are doing about it in, you know, say 6 months to 12 months from now. But yeah, for now, they're one of the story. I mean, they're probably the story of the year in terms of like a single technique, which is not something I thought I'd be saying in 2020, since in 2018 we were already like, oh man, these low calf kicks are changing the sport, but I don't think we knew.
Yeah. I don't know if Benson Henderson created it, but he's been the guy who's been credited with he's the one who made it famous. Like, I don't know if he was the first one to throw a kick in MMA to the calf, but he's definitely the one who brought it to the forefront of everyone's eyes. I think you made a great point where you said there'll be adjustments. There's always will be adjustments. And we go back to when the wrestlers, like, there was a reign where, I still think we're in that reign, but there was a reign where if you weren't a wrestler, you just weren't going to be a top fighter. It was just, Mark Coleman, take you down, headbutt you, Tito Ortiz. Like, there was a reign that happened, and then there was an adjustment. And now I think we'll have an adjustment to this calf kicks. But it's really interesting because I'm trying to think what you possibly could do other than beat them to the punch. You said that someone will find the answer for this. The person who won't find the answer for this, or likely won't be finding the answer, is Anthony Smith, because he had no answer. He was taken out with the leg kicks early. Once he fell, it was about 1 minute into the fight when he fell with a leg kick, the calf kick. He never was able to recover.
He never was. And the second round, Rakic made sure to land one on him hard in their very first exchange. And I think Smith probably came out for that second round with kind of like a different mindset. Okay, I got to do this and that. I need to get back into this fight. I know I lost that round. And 10 seconds in, he was looking gun shy again. And while Smith is not a perfect fighter, he's always like hesitancy to pull the trigger has never really been a big problem for him. But yeah, like, he just didn't seem to know what to do about him. They were hurting him. They were disrupting his rhythm. And they were the main difference in the fight, other than him just being overpowered by a bigger, younger, stronger guy.
Yeah, and Anthony Smith, to his credit, I mean, the first thing you think of Anthony Smith is just how, not the most talented guy, not a great athlete, but just a guy that kind of can. Had a little bit of ability and was able to make everything he possibly could get out of that ability to become a good fighter. But the also thing that I think about is Anthony Smith is just the insane toughness. I mean, we saw that in his last fight against Glover Teixeira. In this fight, I think other fighters might have been stopped even 1 minute in when he fell, he found a way to turn it into a grappling match. He didn't win the grappling match. He didn't win anything in this fight. Let's talk about the total strikes. The total strikes were 136-20. That's how. That wasn't significant strikes. He didn't win the grappling match by any means. Alexander Rakic had over 12 minutes of top control in a 15-minute fight. So I'm gonna ask you and you're probably gonna do what when I used to do the show with John Franklin. John Franklin used to always ask me the same question, and I'd always kind of say, if we almost had a joke, I'd say somewhere in the middle. So here's the two options. Was this more on Rakic starting to become a star? Because say what you want about Anthony Smith, you are a top of the line fighter. You're a top notch elite fighter if you do what Anthony Rakic did to Anthony Smith. So that's one. Or do you think it's all the damage going back to the John Jones fight recently, the Glover Teixeira fight, the last one, now this one? Is it more saying wow, Anthony Smith is not a top fighter anymore, or he just had that little window based on? Because this guy was a mediocre, run of the mill kind of fighter who went on a run. It was kind of Cinderella. The ball kind of just hit. The clock struck midnight. Time to get out of the ball, and that's where we are with this Smith. Where do you feel? Do you feel like this was a good showing for Rakic or just a terrible showing for Smith?
I think it was more of a terrible showing for Smith. I think Smith is a bit of a Cinderella story. Really did kind of capture lightning in a bottle there, because he moved into the light heavyweight division off of that last loss to Thiago Santos. He wiped out Evans and Hua. Two guys who definitely are, their competitive value at the time he beat them did not stack up to their name value. But all of a sudden he had two all-timers in his back pocket. Beat Oezdemir, just legit beat him. That was a great win for him. And then just the stars aligned to get him a title shot off that. There are a lot of other time windows where beating Volkan Oezdemir doesn't get you a shot at the light heavyweight title, but it did. And all of a sudden it just moved him to a different shelf. He's now a former title challenger. They say it 10 times every time he fights. But what's he really shown us since then?
Yeah. He did get that win over Gustafsson, but Gustafsson has looked a shell of the guy that gave John Jones a fight, their first fight, or the guy who gave Daniel Cormier such a fight. Anthony Smith, when I introduced him as former title challenger. He's always going to have that title. Ricardo Lamas is the guy that was on this card. He always going to be referred to as former title challenger, UFC title challenger. I think of Anthony Smith the same way I think of Austin Springer, where he's coming in. And what I mean by that is Austin Springer probably isn't UFC level, but for the rest of his life, he's going to be referred to as Austin Springer, UFC veteran. Mm-hmm. Anthony Smith probably wasn't title challenger level, but forever he's always going to have that title. And you know what? For a guy who grind on the regional scene for so long, middle of the pack guy, good for him. Good that he's always going to have that title. Let's do some matchmaking. You want to take Rakic or you want to take Smith? Who would you rather do first?
Let's get Smith out of the way.
All right. So Anthony Smith, he's now on a 2-fight losing streak. Looked absolutely terrible in both those losses. Who would you, if you were in charge, who would you match him with?
Okay, assuming that there's not going to be any talk of him dropping back down to 185 or anything like that,
I doubt that.
He at least needs to step all the way out of the top 10 for his next opponent. I would say either give a chance for someone who's not yet a top 15 contender but has been winning a couple fights, a guy like Paul Craig, a shot at him. Or I would have said Alonzo Menefield, but now it looks like Menefield and Ovince St. Preux are going to fight in a couple weeks. Whoever comes out of that healthy and looking okay, I don't even care if it's the winner or the loser. If it's competitive but OSP loses, great, give me OSP versus Smith. If Menefield wins, great, give me Menafield versus Smith. Just whichever guy's healthy and didn't look terrible would be fine as well. But I think he needs that kind of opponent, either a former top 10 or 15 guy or someone who's still up and coming.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think he should face, his name value, he has name value. His name value needs to build the future or build guys who are just outside that range. I was just looking up Anthony Smith. His last 6 fights, he's been in the main event of the UFC, which is insane to think about. A lot of them were, all of them but the John Jones fight was a fight night card. But that still reigns value. And we were talking about the title of being former title challenger. It's recent. It's not like a long time ago where people, it's not Gil Castillo we're throwing out there, So I would go with the winner of Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann. Johnny Walker had a lot of buzz, lost a little bit with the Corey Anderson loss, but Ryan Spann, a guy, Fortis MMA, hard hitter. Both those guys, I expect that whoever wins that one will probably win in a spectacular knockout or some grand fashion and will have some buzz back. Now, if they could jump in and ride that buzz, get Anthony Smith, who seems right for the pickings, also knock him out or hurt him or look good in that one, now you got some buzz back on one of those guys. So that's who I'd go. Let's go with Rakic. I'll go first this time. He was calling for a title shot. I don't hate him getting next title shot, but I don't like it either. I think that should be the winner of Santos and Glover Teixeira. So I would actually do the opposite. I would say take the loser of Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. They fight next month. Whoever loses that matchup, he faces. Who would you match with?
I would be fine with that. He's also he's not that experienced a guy yet. He's still developing. This was a 3-round fight. I would be fine if you matched him up with Yuri Prohaska.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I wrote that one down, and they've already fought each other. I mean, it was a long time ago, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's not indicative of how they are now as fighters. It has a little bit of interest there, and it's the only other guy in the top 10 that doesn't really have a dance partner right now.
Yeah, what I like about that matchup is it kind of sets your order. Like right now, it's Reyes versus Blachowicz. The second one would be, in my opinion, I would have number 2 in line is Santos Teixeira winner, and then that would be number 3 in line. You might have it. You might flip them. You might say 2 is the new guy in Prohaska or Rakic, guy who hasn't got the title shot, or and 3 being the guys who have got the title shots, Teixeira and Santos. Speaking of guys who have got title shots, we had one of the longest reigning. I don't know if this is true, but a long reigning champion. I almost said one of the longest reigning in welterweight, but that's a weight class that has had very long champions. Robbie Lawler took on Neil Magny. It was not a good night for the former champion. As Neil Magny also had a dominant performance, beating Robbie Lawler in every aspect of the fight. Same thing I just asked you about Smith and Rakic. Does this tell you more about Magny, or does it tell you more about Lawler?
I think it tells us more about Lawler, and that is nothing to take away from Magny, because I've always been a fan of the guy. But this is Robbie Lawler just kind of looking like we expected. And I say that as someone who picked Lawler in this fight. I thought, you know what?
So you didn't go 5-0 on the evening, is that what you're telling me?
I did not go 5-0 on the evening. Yeah. I mean, some people did, but I was not one of them.
I'm not. I'm never gonna let this joke go. We could be doing the show 2 years from now. I'm still gonna be talking about how you screwed me. and as I fall down, I'm in 12th place, and I'm 25 picks behind Brian Knapp. But I'll still say that you screwed me on this night. You killed my momentum. That's what happened.
That's exactly what I did. I picked Lawler because I thought Magny can be hit.
Sure.
Lawler has 15 minutes to do Robbie Lawler things to him. And for that reason, even in the last 90 seconds of the fight, I was like, yeah, this isn't over yet, until it was. But yeah, Lawler just looked slow to pull the trigger, which I just said this about Anthony Smith. It's even more so for Lawler. Somebody, I believe it was Jay, said in the Sherdog Slack chat, gun shy Robbie Lawler, is a sad look. just Magny looked sharper, quicker, just better everywhere. He looked better everywhere than Lawler did. And that's happened before. But the last time I saw it happen was against a Rafael dos Anjos that was at the absolute height of his powers in 2017.
Yeah, it definitely is. No one wants to see Robbie Lawler being gun shy. I think that happens with age when you realize that you can't go hard 15 minutes when you get to a certain age. Plus, we talked about the wars that Anthony Smith has taken, the damage. Nobody has taken more damage in respect of maybe Justin Gaethje than Robbie Lawler has, and he's a lot older than Justin Gaethje. All right, Kazushi Sakuraba, okay. But other than Kazushi, no American has taken more damage than Robbie Lawler. I would still rather, your chance of winning Robbie, in my opinion, is, going all out as hard as you can, rock him, sock him, robot style for 2.5 minutes and then completely guys out. At least you have a 2.5 minutes to land that shot instead of having 15 minutes of never throwing that shot. It reminds me a lot of John Dotson a couple weeks ago, which I was flipping out about. It's hard to. I mean, he's definitely lost some hand speed when he was throwing. We saw in this fight he tried wrestling a little bit, which we haven't seen Robbie do often. But I mean, man, this guy came from a wrestling background. This guy came up in the Militich fighting systems in Iowa, was it Bettendorf, Iowa, where they just grow wrestlers. I mean, he comes from a wrestling background, but late in your career is not the time to turn into a wrestler. Not against someone like Neil Magny, who's grossly underrated, underappreciated in the wrestling game. That's probably, in my opinion, the strength of Neil Magny's game is everyone who sees this tall, lanky guy and they think, striking, which he's not a bad outside striker, but what he's good at is two ranges. All the way out or all the way in, where he actually uses the long range to get that body lock, and he did it against Robbie Lawler. At this point, I just see Robbie Lawler as a guy who has a puncher's chance. And every fight that goes on, that chance gets smaller as well. That window gets smaller and smaller. And it's sad. I don't want to see that anymore.
I'm with you. I agree.
So let's do this. Let's talk about Magny. I'm going to kind of really focus on these two main events because the rest of the card, I think, other than Grasso, we don't have anybody else ranked. Magny's on a run now. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He looked good in all 3 fights. This one being probably his most impressive. But I mean, he beat Li Jingliang and he beat Anthony Rocco Martin. So I mean, those are 3 good opponents. Even Robbie Lawler at this point is still a good win. It's definitely the biggest name in his head. When he sits down with his kids one day, it's nice when they pull up the Sherdog Fight Finder and you see, oh, wow, you beat Robbie Lawler, Dad, But so Magny was talking about, continue improving, being a champion one day. I don't think he'll ever be UFC champion. I'm assuming you feel the same way. But what is his ceiling? Where do you think he can, rise to?
I think if just a few things had panned out a different way for him in the last couple of years, he'd be in the top 15 right now, and we'd be thinking of him as just one of those perennial contender types. I still think, spoiler, if we're going to talk about matchmaking, I think he deserves a top 10 fighter next. I have one in mind. Okay. And if he beats that person, he's in the top 10, and he'll probably stick around for a while. He's not an easy out for anybody. I mean, he's been put away with ease a few times, but they've been rare and weird feeling, the Lorenz Larkin fight.
Yeah, that's that was when he was just starting to come in his own. But yeah,
and that still sticks out in my mind as just one of the more unexpected fights ever, just in terms of how it looked for me. But no, I don't think he'll ever string together enough wins to get a title shot. But he's a top 10 quality fighter right now. Sure. And I think he has several more years of that because he's not a guy that takes a beating.
No.
And he's not a guy who depends on, freakish hand speed and foot speed and timing for his game to work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's not Tyron Woodley where, once the floor drops out, the floor drops out. That's what I've been saying about Tyron Woodley. I think Tyron Woodley's done. I think he's absolutely done. I think he's going to go on one of these Henan Barrow runs. Like, that's what I expect. Neil Magny's going to seem like a guy based on his style. He can last a lot longer. That definitely more technical. But when I think of Neil Magny, those things that you said that really we kind of feel the same way. There's like losses in his career that just extremely jump out to me. And out of his last 4 losses, 3 of them, you mentioned the Lorenz Larkin. I want to mention the other 3. The other 3 was Damian Maia, where I don't think he landed a strike. I think it was like the record. Like Damian Maia went like almost the whole fight without having a. Was it Damian Maia didn't land a strike and still won or something like that? It's something. Or he landed 1 strike.
Yeah.
The RDA fight where RDA just ran right through him, took him down, submitted him. And then the Santiago Ponzinibbio where he got the brakes beat off from him until finally he was put out of his misery. So those jump out to me as like, man, those are still tough. And then if you go through his record, you can kind of nitpick a little bit. Like Johnny Hendricks, like, yeah, it was a good win, but then Johnny Hendricks went on this crazy losing streak, and that was actually in the middle of it. Carlos Condit is a shell of himself. Craig White is Craig White. The next 2, Li Jingliang and Anthony Rocco Martin, good fighters, but not top 10, not top 15 fighters. Like, they're like that next tier down. They're very good quality wins. And then Robbie Lawler, which this isn't Robbie Lawler from 3 years ago. So it's hard. Like, I don't even know where the ceiling is with him. So before we go to Lawler, because I think we might spend a little bit more time on Lawler, let's match make. You kind of hinted at who you'd go with. Who would you match him with?
I like Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, I knew you. I think we talked about Chiesa. I think we talked about this matchup recently.
We might have. The thing is, Chiesa's on a 3-fight winning streak since moving up to 170, and his 3 that he's won, they have more name value on paper, but they're no better than the wins that Magny has in his last 3.
Absolutely.
Yet Chiesa's the one we have ranked. Like, dude, you think Condit was a shell of himself when Magny beat him? How about when Chiesa beat him? Chiesa beat him like holding like a 1-arm hammer lock.
Yeah.
Like doing a finish that most people need 2 arms for. I like that fight. I like it as a fight. I'd love to see, how that plays out. And I think it's appropriate just competitively for the 2 of them.
Yeah. So when I say top 10 guys, a lot of times I don't look at the UFC rankings, like who's their top 10. I think more of my top 10. So the guy that jumped out to me, and I would change my opinion if these guys have fought each other. I don't think they have. This is why I'm doing the match. Like 2 guys who's better than division. And I'd go with Stephen Thompson. Like, have they ever fought each other? Like, I don't think so, right?
Magny and Thompson?
Yeah. Like, I don't remember. If they did, I don't remember that matchup. Yeah, just like one of those ones, 2 guys who've been like, in the welterweight rankings for a long time, they never face each other. Just seems strange to me. And, the winner of that would get a little bit more buzz. I kind of feel like they're both in the same sense. Like, Magny's never reached the level of Stephen Thompson where he was getting a title shot, but like he's been around. He's not a sexy pick anymore. He's, he's like, all right, if you play fantasy football, like and you draft a running back, or you draft a wide receiver, he's taking Julio Jones. You take Julio Jones, and I was like, oh yeah, Julio Jones. It's like not sexy anymore. Like that's, compared to taking insert, sexy running back. I don't know, like the new guy, the new guy in the block. You know what I mean? So, when we mentioned Jeff Neal, it's like oohs, ahs. Like you don't get that with Stephen Thompson anymore. You don't get that with Neil Magny. That's why I have them face each other and like put the other one out to pasture. Let's talk about Robbie Lawler. I want to do matchmaking, and then I want to do another thing with Robbie Lawler. That's why I want to do the matchmaking first. Get it. I want him to retire. Like I don't want to see. I don't want Robbie Lawler to. I don't want people to build names off of Robbie Lawler. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on this. This one just felt like a bummer to me, and it could have been much worse. There are a lot of fighters of sort of Neil Magny's same level that would have really, really hurt Robbie Lawler tonight.
Yeah, like if we talked about Jeff Neal, like could you imagine that?
Yeah.
Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Sure.
Like I like these guys would have, like Stephen Thompson's so nice. Stephen Thompson might have like let off the gas a little bit and just kind of jabbed for the rest of the fight. Yeah, like Robbie Lawler, you're right. He's lucky he went against Neil Magny. Is anybody else I'm thinking of? Like I'm forgetting. Vicente Luque.
Yeah, like Vicente Luque outside of the cage is the nicest dude on the planet, but he's not someone you want to be vulnerable against in there.
No. So we both feel like he should retire. Do you? Now my second question is: do you think he will?
Nope.
I don't either.
I don't. I don't.
I feel like Robbie Lawler is going to be that guy who's doing bare knuckle boxing 10 years from now.
Yeah, I frankly wouldn't be too surprised if he were doing bare knuckle boxing 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Because if he demands another fight in the UFC, they give him one, he loses, and either just looks completely uninspiring like tonight, or just gets blown out of his sneakers, and the UFC's like, we're done. We can't do this in good conscience anymore, which, I mean, they do occasionally too.
Yeah.
He's going to go somewhere else. He's either going to go to another MMA promotion that will give him a few more paychecks and let him scratch that competitive itch, or he'll be bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah, I'd rather have him in like Bellator, or them getting Johnny Hendricks back and they do a trilogy fight or something. Like I'd rather have that than bare knuckle boxing. But anyways, let's match make anyways. If the UFC he sticks around. I feel the same way as I felt like Anthony Smith. Like, obviously, he's a name, and he's an even bigger name than Anthony Smith, and he's got, I don't know anybody who doesn't love Robbie Lawler. Like, he's a fan favorite. People, I mean, you saw the way Twitter was reacting when he was about to fight Neil Magny, and I was feeling like, oh, everyone's excited. Neil Magny's going to, I was, like, extremely confident, like, Neil Magny's going to give him a beating. And I feel like the guy who I'm going to mention would give him a beating, but I feel the same thing. Like, you have to get someone over. But welterweight, there's so many guys who have earned the name. So I went with Bilal Muhammad. I feel like he's a company man who's willing to fight anybody, like always active. Like, he deserves a guy like Robbie Lawler. Who would you go with?
I would be fine with someone like Muhammad. Muhammad is someone that is clearly on the way up. The guy's won 8 of his last 10, something like that. He's only lost to Vicente Luque and Jeff Neal, who are guys right on the cusp. If you can either do that, you can either use him or use Lawler to build the next round of contenders, or you can just say, okay, we're going to give this all-time great some winnable, competitively appropriate fights, to kind of like round out his victory lap, or and
somebody with a name like him,
somebody like
you do the rematch against Carlos Condit.
Rematch, well, if Condit wants it, rematch with Cerrone, something like that. Even if Cerrone probably has a little more left in the tank, or thinks he has more left in the tank than Lawler does at this point. But yeah, either give him, a suitable contender coming up, someone like Muhammad, or, hell, just what is Robbie Lawler at his best right now? Like, what is the best he could be? The best he could be right now is a reliable, entertaining action fighter who's never going to be a top 10 contender again. Yeah. Give him someone else on that same level. Give him a, Randy Brown or Nico Price type.
Yeah. Matt Brown. I don't know.
Hey, rematch with Matt Brown.
Oh yeah, I forgot they did fight each other. All right, so before we move on to the rest of the fights, and I'm probably drawing this out too long, if we don't see Robbie Lawler ever again, see, he actually does hang it up, surprises us. Where does he rank all time in the welterweight rankings? I mean, George St. Pierre is number 1. 2 is probably Matt Hughes.
In terms of straight achievement, I mean, he's probably in the top 5. He won the belt and he defended it twice. The people who defended it more times than that are St. Pierre, Miletich, and Woodley.
Yeah. Oh, and Hughes.
Sorry, St. Pierre, Hughes, Miletich, Woodley. Yeah. I mean, in terms of straight achievement, he's not as high as he is kind of in our minds and in our memories.
Yeah.
He had this huge kind of wilderness years in the middle when he was fighting at middleweight out in Strikeforce. like Rumble on the Rock. Mm-hmm. When, he didn't realize the respiratory problems he had, so he wasn't doing as much cardio as he could, was doing next to no live sparring. And he was still a pretty good middleweight. He had some great wins during that phase, but he just missed a huge chunk of what should have been the prime of his welterweight career. And I think he's still probably one of the 5 or 6 greatest welterweights ever.
Yeah, he's that guy that, like, anytime I've given up on someone, like, I always say, like, well, I mean, don't forget, we all gave up on Robbie. Like, no one has seen him to do this turnaround. So, like, when a young fighter starts losing, he's always my example. Like, well, he could become a Robbie Lawler. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, he's probably in that 5. Like, you figure I put George St. Pierre 1, probably Matt Hughes 2. Next tier, like Tyron Woodley. Honestly, Kamaru Usman, the run he's been on, he's got to be in there. I don't have Pat Miletich nearly as high. If you ever listened to my MMA Yesterday show, when we did the Pat Miletich years, you'll hear me rant on that, just based on he fought a lot of cans, and he fought outside the organization and lost during his reign, which is, could you imagine that? Like, imagine Kamaru Usman fighting in other, like, regional shows and losing, but somehow still coming back and defending the title. Anyways, I just wanted to see where we feel. Like, Robbie Lawler is definitely extremely accomplished. Speaking of someone who wants to hold the title one day, Alexa Grasso has moved weight classes, and she moved up to flyweight, and she picked up a unanimous decision of a Ji Young Kim. Grasso looked good at 125. Like, she looked fast. She looked accurate. And honestly, strawweight is a lot more loaded than flyweight is. I mean, we think about Cynthia Calvillo. Calvillo got one win at flyweight, and there was people who were saying she should get the next title shot. I'm not saying that Grasso should fight for the title. I'm not saying Grasso would win the title. I'm definitely not saying that. But she definitely has a much better chance to one day always be called, title challenger Alexa Grasso.
UFC title challenger Alexa Grasso, where she did not have a clear path to that at 115.
No. I mean, she had a path, but it is a lot of hurdles in that path. What did you think about Grasso's performance?
I thought it was excellent. I was nervous about I was nervous about her performance. I was kind of wondering, if it would turn out that a lot of her success at strawweight was due to generally being the bigger woman and being able to kind of bully people around. Now, Ji Yeon Kim was the perfect first flyweight opponent to take because she's not a huge physically imposing one. But I thought Grasso looked really good. Like, very impressive performance by her.
Yeah, like, we think about, like, Jessica Ai. Like, that's who Cynthia Calvillo is. That is a physically imposing girl, someone who wants to make it an ugly fight. Like, how would she do then? I don't know, but she's still very young. Yeah, I feel good. Let's matchmake her just because she's, she was ranked in our strawweight rankings. I went with the winner of Vivian Araujo versus Montana De La Rosa. I'm very high on Araujo still, even though she had a recent loss. I like Araujo, and I like De La Rosa. Like, I think that'd be a fun fight, Grasso versus the winner of that. Who would you go with?
I'm fine with that. I'm also good with just saying, okay, you were a borderline contender at strawweight. You looked great in your flyweight debut. You're now in a more shallow division. Let's slot you right in against a top, kind of 10 through 15 type person. Roxanne Modafferi and Andrea Lee are about to fight. I would be fine with her getting the winner of that.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I'm good. I finally feel like they're like, I think Araujo is probably just as talented as those girls, and De La Rosa. So I think we're kind of in the same range. This is why I wanted to say why I think Grasso is the best move is to fight at flyweight. If I went through the strawweight rankings, we'd find 5 or 6 girls instantly that not only would I say it'd be favor of Grasso, would be like largely favor of Grasso. Obviously the champion, Weili Zhang, Rose Namajunas, probably Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Tatiana Suarez. Like, there's 5 right there just off the top of my head that would be big favorites, like at least over 2-1.
Yep.
Who other than Valentina Shevchenko would be a 2-1 favorite over Alexa Grasso right now at flyweight?
Oh, I don't think anybody would be that big a favorite over her.
I mean, Jennifer Meyer is fighting for the title. Would Jennifer Meyer be more? I mean, would she even be a favorite over her? Like if not,
I think she'd be a favorite.
I do too, but a pick'em, pretty close to a pick'em, -130.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my point. Like, she could win. She could beat, Caitlin Chikagian. She could beat Jennifer Meyer. She could beat, Joanne Calder. Like girls that are at the top of the division. Like we're not saying the same about strawweight.
No.
So yeah, I think it's a good move, and don't be surprised if other fighters move up. Speaking of former title challenges, Ricardo Lamas took on Bill Algeo. Algeo was a somewhat late replacement. He replaced Ryan Hall about, I don't know, I think it was like 10 days or so ago. This fight, I was taking notes on this fight like midway, and then everything I wrote down, I was like, oh, I got to change that. Lamas won a unanimous decision, but halfway through the fight, it looked like he was running out of gas. Algeo was starting to pick up the pace. He was getting momentum, and I was writing down, this reminds me of Jim Miller versus Vince Pichel, where Miller looked good earlier. You actually said it on the roundtable that Miller would be good for the first round, maybe the second round, a little bit portion, but he's going to die, and that's how I felt about Lamas. Like, he clearly slurs down. The damage was taking its toll. He got rocked. Algeo was surprisingly stopping his takedowns. Like, he was doing all this stuff. But then Lamas found an area, like, got a second win, really was able to use his wrestling third round, and had a dominant third round, like a 10-8 round. What did you take of the performance? Like, how did you feel about this fight?
Well, because I, am Ryan Hall's biggest fan, and this was the fight that I was looking forward to most on the whole card. I started out angry at it, but, considering that, it definitely won me over by the end. This was a fantastic fight. It had everything you would want in a 3-round fight between guys of roughly this level. Like, lots of offense, lots of drama, actual swings and momentum, where, same as you, if you'd asked me at 3 different points in the fight, I would have guessed 2 different guys were going to win. And yeah, Lamas, that third round. Because there was no smoke and mirrors. He didn't try any different technique. He just looked like he picked up a power-up in a video game. He didn't look tired. He, our play-by-play said, Lamas comes out of his corner like he was shot out of a cannon. I couldn't describe it any better than that. And once he was on top, and once he got Algeo's back, I think that's where the difference in experience started to play. When you have 20 fights in the octagon, when you've been doing this for as many years as he has, if you're winning, especially if you're winning and you're in control on the ground, the difference in the amount of gas that you're spending to keep that position and keep threatening versus the amount the other guy is spending to have to survive, there's a huge gap there. That was a fantastic round by Lamas.
Yeah.
Having said that, Algeo, he looked good. He had a lot to offer. It was the rare kind of fight that left me thinking better of both fighters.
Yeah, totally. I didn't put him on my Bulls list, but I almost put Algeo on it because of how good he looked. I do the Contender Series previews. I liked Algeo against Brendan Laughlin. When I wrote it up last year, I was like, both these guys are really good. I hope the winner gets signed. And if you remember, that was a good matchup. So that's one thing. So the other thing that people would say, Algeo took the fight at short notice, that's why he faded third round. No, he fought Tim Dooling 2 weeks ago. So he had a camp, he was in shape. I mean, Tim Dooling is not Ricardo Lamas, but that's why he gassed down in the third round. Ricardo almost broke him in that third round. You could almost see that. Now, does that obviously changes when you have the amount of experience that a guy like Ricardo Lamas. But if Algeo had that experience, he maybe not break. Maybe we have this crazy finish where Twitter's going crazy, who won and fight of the year kind of thing. Still really, really fun fight. That said, there's still some huge warning signs on Lamas. I mean, he was hurt in this fight. For the most part, his wrestling wasn't working. He does look slow, he's So, not much to get excited about Ricardo Lamas, especially considering after the fight he talked about retirement. He did not announce his retirement, but he did hint at it. And the way how emotional he was and his speech he kind of did, I think this might be the last time we see Ricardo Lamas. So make a pick. Do we see Ricardo Lamas again? Just gut feeling. What do you think?
The gut feeling, I think we do. That's always going to be my pick. If you just say that, unless the dude lost a limb in the octagon, I'm going to be like, we're probably going to see him again. But having said that, this inspired my confidence in the other direction more than just about anything else I've heard in recent memory in MMA. Yeah, he said what somebody would say who was about to retire. Not, you're never going to see these gloves in the octagon again. He said, I need to go home and talk to my family about it, but this might be the last time you see me. That is what somebody says who is actually in his right mind and has been thinking about this since before the fight. So it wouldn't completely surprise me. And then, dude, I've been watching this guy fight for a decade. I'm sure I've heard 15 of his post-fight interviews, and this is the only one I remember anything from. It was more heartfelt, more words came out of him. He made a frankly political statement that would go well as this is my epitaph professionally,
Uh-oh. I think I lost. Ben froze on me. I don't know if he's still talking. Let's talk. Oh, we lost you for a second there, Ben, but you can't hear me? Ben can't hear me. I don't know what the issue is. We lost sound for a second. I'm going to have to edit this later. I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully Ben can I can hear him. Can you talk, Ben?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
Microphone. Yep, I can hear you just fine.
All right, guys. I'm not even going to edit this. It's like 1 a.m. That's what happens when you do it live. Sometimes you get what happened. But he was basically saying, like, if we didn't get all of it, he was basically saying, like, he was giving a retirement speech. This was his goodbye speech. The worst time to lose connection, and I'll tell you why, I need your insight in this next match more than anything, because on ESPN Plus, this was the fight that kept breaking up on me, and that was the matchup between Maki Pitolo and Impa Kasanganay. So Kasanganay won a unanimous decision. From what I saw, which was bits and pieces, is what I expected. Kasanganay is just a better athlete. He hits harder. He's more well-rounded than Maki Pitolo. Like, what did I miss, and how do you feel about this fight?
You didn't miss much. It was a good fight, exciting, back and forth. Kasanganay won very obviously, but as much as the UFC booth really just loves to play up all the Hawaiian stereotypes every time Pitolo fights, and he's got the Coconut Bombs nickname, he is not this 2001 era like Ray Cooper Sr. like type just wild brawler. He's a pretty good kickboxer. He's not been out finessed and outclassed on the feet much in his Contender Series and UFC career. Kasanganay looked looked sharper. He did really well, and I'm impressed. I had Pitolo in this one. I thought he was going to be too much for him. I thought he was going to catch him with something, and he did not. Another thing that the UFC booth likes to bring up, and I'm not going to lean too hard into it, is what a short time Kasanganay has been doing this, because the guts, the heart, the athleticism, that's all there. He's clearly hungry to improve, and so he's a guy that he may not even be hitting his stride yet as a fighter. I don't want to get too high on him, but this is better than I expected him to look coming off the Contender Series even just like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I actually kind of forgot that this was his UFC debut because he just fought 3 weeks ago. When I did the Contender Series preview on him, I actually picked against him. I picked Adams to beat him, and the big thing was his wrestling. He didn't have a wrestling game. And then suddenly, he not only did he have a wrestling game, he out-wrestled Adams. And I was like, whoa, like, that's the improvement you want to see in a young, inexperienced fighter. I love that you talked about stereotypes. Like you said, you stereotype, like Hawaiians always get the stereotypes. Mexican fighters always get stereotypes. This past Contender Series, the Rafael Alves versus Alejandro Flores, like I was waiting for the team to be like, well, he's a Mexican fighter, so he's going to brawl. When I'm like, every single Contender Series guy I have watched and I've done tape study on, nobody's more boring than Alejandro Flores. Like, he is the king of move, jab, move. And I was waiting for them to say it, and I'm glad that they did not say like oh, he's going to be a brawler, Let's move on. Before that was the fight that I kind of wish was cutting out because there was not a lot of action. We had Zach Cummings winning a unanimous decision over Alessio Di Chirico. The Italian fighter I had winning the first round. I had Cummings in the second round. I had the Italian fighter winning the third round into the very last second when we finally had some action and Zach Cummings landed a high kick. How did you do you like me and you write down a score like the last 5 seconds, or do you wait to the very last second to write down your score?
I usually like just have it typed, locked and loaded and ready to send, and I would have had to change it this time. I agree that this wasn't a great fight, but you know what? It wasn't that bad of a fight. I think we just had unrealistic expectations because there'd been just like a string of like sensational finishes right before it. It was a decent fight, and I'm with you. I gave the first round to Di Chirico, second round to Cummings, and if not for the fact that I think Cummings knocked him out with that last head kick, that was 10-9 Di Chirico for me. So whether it knocked him out or not, it won the fight for him because it gave him the round and that gave him the fight. Yeah,
no, absolutely. When I watched this fight, I think you might be onto something about the first 4 fights before. It was, prelims all ended in a stoppage. They were spectacular. I just feel like both guys weren't fighting to win. And anytime someone put on any volume, like that's one thing Mark Montoya kept screaming to Cummings, like, follow up. Don't just throw one punch, like, follow it up. When they did, they landed, they won. And that was my issue with, like I feel like the fight was, like, too... either guy could win it if they just turn it on, but they were both fighting not to lose. And that would, Di Chirico, that cost him. Before that, we had Alex Caceres versus Austin Springer. Alex Caceres is on a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC. So my question to you, Ben, is Bruce Leroy ready to take on Alex Volkanovski? Is that your matchup?
I like the whole Alex versus Alex angle, but that's really the only interest there would be at this point. And I say this as someone who I've genuinely enjoyed the story of Alex Caceres this year. And just, man, the difference even in his post-fight interviews now versus a few years ago. I mean, he's still only 32. He's just literally kind of grown up in front of us because he was a 21, 22-year-old goofball on Tough.
Yeah.
I just finished writing a lengthy article on that season of Tough. He's not the guy you would have predicted to be the second most accomplished alum of Tough 12, about ready to move over Michael Johnson into first 10 years later.
Yeah.
But good for him. He's not for a title shot anytime soon, but he's doing a hell of a lot better than I thought he would be. And even if the strength of schedule factors into it, he's on a 3-fight winning streak, and he looked absolutely sensational tonight. Just the slickness of the back take, the quickness with which he slapped on that choke, where he got it on and he got it cinched up so fast that I think Springer went out for a second even after tapping.
All right, so some guys, I know not everyone speaks Ben's language. They might understand. I get to translate. What he said is when Alex got that haircut, it was the same as Rose Namajunas when she got a haircut. So nothing but championships for Alex Caceres. That's what Ben's saying.
And very much in the same mold. Alex Caceres is 10 times sexier without hair, also. So
I'm not nearly as high on Alex Caceres, and obviously I'm just joking about Tedron. You said strength of schedule. I'm looking at Steven Peterson, Chase Hooper, and Austin Springer. That might be the 3 worst guys in the division. Austin Springer is like I said, a guy I did a contender. He's just a guy. He's the way I feel about Parker Porter when Parker Porter came into the UFC. Like, regional talent, not a great regional talent, but a guy who's been trugging along for so long, it's nice to he gets to, for the rest of his life, be called UFC veteran. That's how I feel about Austin Springer. Like, he's not going to win a UFC fight in the UFC. He's not good. He came in this fight 5 pounds overweight. Mind you, he took the fight on like 2 days' notice, and there was 3 opponent changes. Who was the guy? Who was the guy that briefly was facing Bruce Leroy? Who is
Kevin Kroom?
Kevin Kroom, who might be worse than Austin Springer.
Kroom would have stood out even among the level of short notice opponents we've seen pop up in the UFC in the last 5 months. Yeah. Even compared to them, we were looking at each other like, man, this guy is not UFC material.
Yeah. I've seen him fight. He's the guy who came up. He fought like Matt Bassett in CES, and he's not a UFC talent. But you know what? Go back 2 or 3 years ago, I was saying that about Calvin Kattar. Like, I did not think, I was like, Calvin Kattar is a low level UFC talent at best, and now he's like a top 10 guy in the world. Speaking of top 10 guys in the world, Sean Brady was a guy that I was talking about before he got in the UFC. I was saying this guy could be a top 15 guy. He looked phenomenal against Christian Aguilera, winning by second round submission. This guy's well rounded. He was jabbing up his face. He was having those blast doubles. He locked in a top side guillotine. I see a future top 15 guy. And that's saying a lot. I mean, it's welterweight, so I probably should take top 30, and that would still be a very good compliment at welterweight. The guy's 3-0. He's 13-0 in his career. Are you on the train with me, or are you kind of still at the station, waiting to see if, like, the express train for somebody else comes along?
I'm not quite as high on him as you are, but I'm definitely impressed. I see him right now as, well, and it's kind of ironic because he fought him in his UFC debut, but as an upgraded version of Court McGee. He's a guy who has...
Oh, I think he's so much better. Okay, forget it. Sorry.
He has pretty good skills all around. Doesn't present as like a fantastic plus athlete, but just a physical brute that's just, has an ungodly squeeze on him.
All right, so I think he's a better straight-up jiu-jitsu player. I also think he's a much, much better striker. But ready? This is how high I am on him. Ready for my hot take? I haven't done a hot take in a really long time. If they fought in a month, Sean Brady beats Robbie Lawler. If they fought tonight, if Neil Magny got COVID and Sean Brady got put in against Robbie Lawler, I would have taken Sean Brady over Robbie Lawler.
You know what? I think the version of Robbie Lawler that walked into the cage tonight, I don't think you're crazy for saying that.
Damn it. I tried getting you. Before that, anything else to say about Sean Brady?
No. I mean, he looked fantastic. That was a miserable looking choke. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And we're going to move on and I'm very proud that neither one of us made a Christina Aguilera joke about Christian Aguilera. And the one before that, we had Polyana Viana versus Emily Whitmire. Polyana Viana got a first round submission. Whitmire had a really slick takedown, and Viana had an even slicker sub armbar. This is what she, the scouting report on Viana coming in the UFC was world-class jiu-jitsu. We finally saw it. Anything else to take from this?
Really? No. Just obviously, we're talking about a world-class grappler, so who knows what subtleties were going on in there. But it sure looked as though Whitmire did not figure out how much trouble she was in until it was already happening. That's pretty much it,
Every time I Whitmire, I always think that time she, who's the guy, the jiu-jitsu guy that she yelled at? Remember? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. It's 1:30 in the morning. I'm trying to think what's her teammate cornered another girl, and he said that he wasn't he was going to stay out of it. That I'm trying to think. He's a jiu-jitsu guy for the PFL, world class jiu-jitsu guy, like
Vinny Magalhaes.
Vinny Magalhaes. Yeah, remember that when he yelled at Vinny Magalhaes?
Yeah,
I think she was. Was it the Alexandra Albu? Maybe. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think he cornered Alexander Albu, or maybe it was Jamie Moyle. I don't remember who it was, but afterwards she flipped out on him at the. No, it was Jamie Moyle. Yeah, it was Miyoshi Cormier. She started yelling at Vinny Magalhaes for cornering against her with the teammates.
That's kind of interesting that that's a full circle thing, because we were talking tonight about Vinny being absent from Syndicate MMA as being maybe the reason a couple of their people have gotten caught with pretty basic arm bars in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, maybe she needs to go back and ask for forgiveness of Vinny Magalhaes. And the opening fighting was Mallory Martin versus Hannah Cifers, an absolute bonkers fight. Mallory Martin got a second round submission win over Hannah Cifers. Hannah Cifers flattened Mallory Martin with a big punch. I thought Mallory Martin was out. The way she fell, I think she hit the ground. I think her head bounced off the ground and woke her back up. And Hannah Cifers went in for the kill. Had many opportunities to take her out. The referee was giving Mallory Martin every chance. He kept saying show me something, show it. And every time, in fairness, every time he said show me something, she'd pull guard or she'd shoot, she'd do something. And then she was able to make it to the second round, where she went out, took Hannah Cifers down, and submitted her. This is an ongoing theme recently about same thing happened the very last UFC. The same thing happened where, oh my gosh, what's the two fighters? Who was the two fighters last week? Where there was a Russian guy. It doesn't matter, but it was another comeback. Anything to take from this fight?
It's been a rough year for Hannah Cifers. She's lost 4. She's 0-4 in the UFC with 4 losses by stoppage. And we'll get to the cut list, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about it then.
I had a feeling we had the same pick. Let's get we just covered all the fights. Let's get to the fun stuff. You just mentioned the cut list. I'm assuming you're throwing Hannah Cifers up there.
I'm going to throw Hannah Cifers up there, but it's not quite as obvious as it seems on paper. For one thing, if we've just been talking about the strawweight and flyweight divisions, if you're a woman who's willing to fight in either division, it shouldn't be hard to keep a roster spot. She's lost 4 this year, but they've either been against really, really good fighters. Losing to Angela Hill is not that big of a shame this year. Or, a lot of people get tapped out by Mackenzie Dern. And then in this fight, she was killing her and just couldn't quite do it. What gets me is Cifers is a physically tiny woman. And if she can't make weight at strawweight, being 5'1" and wearing the smallest fight kit in the UFC, that is a problem.
Yeah.
Because they can only use you, as a 2-division short notice person if you can actually make weight. I think she's got to go.
So send her to Invicta. She can go to atomweight or something. But she's 2-5 in the UFC. She lost 4 in a row, 4 stoppage losses, 4 losses in 2020. We all say 2020 is tough for people. Hannah Cifers 2020 is rough. I agree. So long, Hannah Cifers. Anybody else?
That's really. I don't think it's realistic to put Robbie Lawler on the cut list. He's not going to get cut.
Yeah. That, and you just do out of respect. You let them resign. You don't cut them. Yeah. Let's get to the Bulls of the Bears. We already did the negative with the cut list. Let's want to stay negative again. Let's go with the Bears. For those who don't understand what the Bulls and the Bears are, it's a stock market reference. Bulls, when the market's going good, it's a bull market. When the market's going bad, it's a bear market. So bear is bad. We can pick up to 3 people. Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go first.
All right. My number 3, we just mentioned her. Hannah Cifers 0-4 in 2020. Her stock is plummeting. My number 2 is Anthony Smith. Back-to-back losses. In not that he lost back-to-back, but just how he lost was painful. absolutely demolished. And my number one bear, pains me to say this, but Robbie Lawler has lost 5 out of his last 6 fights. The most competitive one was that controversial submission to Ben Askren. I mean, he's been destroyed in all those fights. Robbie Lawler is nowhere near the former welterweight champion. Who are your bears?
Bear number 1, people who can't make weight. Not only did they miss weight and give up some of their purse, they looked awful.
Yeah.
Hannah Cyphers, Austin Springer, both looked awful. So that's bear number 1. Bear number 2 is same as you, Anthony Smith. Just he doesn't look anything like the guy who was, on fire 2 years ago. And then number 1, same as you, Robbie Lawler. The magic of Robbie Lawler has never been that he was an unbeatable guy.
That's right.
He's not Fedor. He's not Khabib. No. Like, even at the absolute apex of his career, he lost fights. I mean, he's something like 28-15. The thing that hurt to see tonight was that he just didn't look like Robbie Lawler. The blood and guts was not there. He looked like a spent fighter for the first time to me, which is saying a lot considering, as you say, he's lost 4 or 5. So.
Yeah, I mean, just something that really stood out to me. You said it was about like even the peak of his career. When he won the UFC title against Johnny Hendricks, I thought he lost that fight. I scored it against him. I mean, I'm not saying robbery. It was an incredible fight of the year candidate. And the Carlos Condit fight was another one that he, defended the title that I thought he lost. And I mean, Rory McDonald was back and forth until the end of getting that knockout. And I'm a huge Robbie Lawler fan. I don't know anybody who isn't. Let's move on to the Bulls. You can go first this time, my man.
Okay. Bull number 1. Meaning my lowest of the Bulls, Alexa Grasso.
All right.
It wasn't like she didn't blow anybody out of the water, but to make a smooth transition from a division where you were a borderline contender into a new division, that's an underratedly tough thing. Like, if she loses this fight tonight, the whole narrative about her for basically the entire rest of her flyweight run is different.
Sure.
Like, she has a whole different set of things to prove. Instead, we're already talking about slotting her in against, contender types.
That's right.
So, big deal for her. Number 2 is going to be Alex Caceres. Like I already said, I don't see future title contention in him. He may not even be a top 10 fixture type, but he's one of my low-key favorite stories of the year. He's finding some measure of success. And on a show where we have something called the cut list every week, there's got to be someone with the broom. So even if he is just taking out featherweights that we later decide are not UFC material, there's someone's got to have the broom.
It's a good point. I mean, like, when you face these level guys, you should do what he did to them. Yeah, yep. Good point.
And number 1 is going to be Ricardo Lamas. This was a good win for him.
Yeah.
This is not a win that I expected for him, even really at the end of the first round. I was like, oh man, Algio's going to come back and take this.
Yeah.
To see Algio look as much bigger as Lamas than Lamas as he did.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamas was never the biggest featherweight.
No.
But he was called the bully for a reason.
Yeah.
Now to see this guy take on a guy half a head taller than him and still earn that nickname in that third round, it did my heart good. As a guy who is on the older side himself, good for the 38-year-olds.
All right, I'm going to give my 3 being the lowest, moving my way up. Ipa Kasaganai. I missed a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of the fight, but the reason why he made my Bulls, I mean, the guy won twice in 18 days. So that right there, your stock is going to be rising up. I mean, this is a guy that, a lot of sharp people are high on this guy. And this is a guy that I picked against on the Contender Series. So good for him. Number 2, I'm going to a referee. I'm going to Chris Taglioni. This guy is, I'm saying, oh man, this fight's over. And he continues, lets people fight. And time after time, he's been right as that fighter has come back and won. When Chris Taglioni is refereeing, if we give out a referee award, I'm voting for Chris Taglioni. And My number one, we are sharing the same number one, Ricardo Lamas, but I'm doing it for a different reason. You think he looked good, and I do think, it's a good win, but I'm giving it to him because I do believe he's retiring, and to retire on a win, to not say, wow, I have more left in me. When you get a win, let me build off of that. To go out on top, very few people go out on top. And obviously, you ultimately want to go on top with a title in your hand. But, to go out with a win, good for Ricardo Lamas. So he is my bull. What is your grade for the overall evening?
If you'd asked me before the co-main event, I would have been A. This is the most entertaining event of the year so far. Really? It's still a B+.
Wow. I went with a C+. I was very high. The prelims was going great. Then was a little bit of a rut. But yeah, I was pretty good. Yeah, you know what? You convinced me. I'll go B-. It was a very good card. I'm going to put you on the spot. We have another UFC in a week. Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai is headlining. Who are you taking to win that fight?
Give me Overeem. I do like Overeem in that one. It's a weird thing to say about a guy who used to have horrible gas tank issues, still doesn't have a great chin. But I think 5-round fights actually aren't a bad thing for him.
No, I agree. And I will give my prediction after the Sherdog deadline is over, so I can spend another week complaining how Ben screwed me. There you guys have it. This is the Shillan Duffy Show, a recap of UFC. I don't know if I even said this in the title. UFC Vegas 8, UFC Smith versus Rakic, UFC Fight Night
175.
175. That's why Ben's the best in this. That he knew that off the top of his head. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff that all the other podcasts beg you to do, which we hardly ever mention. Follow Ben on Twitter at
Benjamin Duffy.
And check out all his work at Sherdog.com. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Keith Shillan and May. I'll spell it for you because my last name can be tough. KEITHSHILLAN with the word MMA afterwards. Guys, we'll be back recapping the next episode. Maybe we'll start getting some bonus stuff out there too, guys. See you then.